The Zelos Blacktip was released at the tail end of last year, back in December. And Zelos had a lot of great watch releases in 2020, but for me, the most exciting one was this Zelos Blacktip. It's something really fresh and new for Zelos, and I think they just did a phenomenal job with it. Let's take a quick look and I'll tell you why. Hey guys, this is Dave. Welcome back to Just the Watch, the budget watch collecting channel. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Zelos Blacktip. The Blacktip is a 41mm diver that is very slim, so it kind of fits in an interesting part of Zelos's range. I think earlier on Zelos focused more on larger watches, things like the Swordfish and the Hammerhead. But then recently they began to slim down with models like the Horizons and the Mako and the Swordfish 40mm version. So the Blacktip is coming in kind of in between at that 41mm spot. And they have this listed as a skin diver, which is a type of dive watch that I wasn't really familiar with. I had to do some research, but it's a really interesting category of dive watch. Apparently they hit their heyday back in the 60s and 70s. They were really big, and after that kind of tapered off. But skin diver comes from the idea that, you know, it's meant for divers who are not using a lot of gear, kind of a more minimalist sort of dive watch. So something that is a little bit slimmer, a little bit easier to wear, usually doesn't have as much water resistance as a professional diver. And oftentimes they were also a little bit more elegant looking, a little bit more beautiful than your kind of really rugged tool watches that were meant for professional diving. And I think this watch really embodies all of those characteristics. It's incredibly easy to wear on the wrist. It looks fantastic. And yet it delivers all of this while maintaining Zelos's really unique design language that they've been developing over the years. Now it is featuring a Miyota 9015 movement and a ceramic bezel. These are two features that Zelos usually puts in their higher priced watches, and this one kind of fits in that category. This one's priced at $499, which kind of puts in the middle of Zelos's range, but is sort of at the upper end of what I'd consider to be an affordable watch. Based on specifications alone, I think this is a pretty fair price, but if you throw in everything else that Zelos brings to the table, such as their really cool design, great customer service, and generally good finishing, I think it's a pretty good value. This particular colorway that I'm looking at, the teal, is sold out, but there are a few other ones left, so you still have time to pick up one of these watches if you're interested. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the watch and I'll tell you more about it. In order to facilitate this review, Zelos did give me this watch for free to keep. However, other than the watch itself, I didn't receive any compensation from Zelos, and they didn't have any input into the content of this review. All right, let's take a look at it. So as is standard with pretty much all Zelos watches, you're getting a nice wooden box to keep the watch in, and it also comes with a kind of faux leather watch roll that's also very handy. It does not come with any extra straps, but I have a couple here that I want to kind of try it on in a second because this watch really is a strap monster. But here is the Zelos Blacktip, the newest diver from Zelos. And it's really cool to see them doing new designs like this. You know, they have kind of their bread and butter designs that they continue to refine and to come out with new colorways and new metals and all those things. But to see them do an entirely new diver kind of at the end of last year is kind of exciting to sort of take stock of where the brand is and kind of get an idea of where they're going. And this one sort of fits sort of in the middle of their price range and their size range as well. It's a 41mm diver. I got it measured across the bezel just over 41mm. And then it really narrows down to a 20mm lug width. So you can see those lugs are very short and very narrow looking, which gives it kind of a unique look, sort of a little bit more rounded and bulbous on the wrist. But it's very thin. It's got the Miyota 9000 series movement inside, which allows it to be very slim, so it's only 12mm tall, and also fairly compact 47mm lug to lug. So this is a very comfortable watch on the wrist. This watch features a lot of Zelos's design cues that they've been kind of incorporating in a lot of their watches, including the kind of cathedral style hour hand, which matches the main markers at 12, 3, and 9. Also kind of these divided cathedral style hands. And those ones in particular are multicolored lume, is another kind of feature that Zelos really uses on a lot of their designs and watches. So very distinct Zelos look, and yet I feel like this one really is starting to distinguish itself from a lot of the other ones in the Zelos line. It's just a really interesting design in that it feels very kind of modern and new like so much of Zelos does, but at the same time it has kind of a vintage and old school feel too, with the shape of the case and the slimness of it and the size. So I've really enjoyed wearing this one. It's really become one of my favorite watches from Zelos. One of the most interesting things about this one, I think, is the bezel. So this one has a very thin and kind of muted bezel. So, a lot of times you wouldn't even notice that this was a dive bezel because the markers are primarily just etched in there. So they're not very visible, which is, sort of unusual for a diver. Usually this dive bezel is a very prominent feature on most divers. And yet here it's very subdued, and without knowing it, you might not even realize that this was a dive bezel. For some, that might be a little bit of a problem. They might want a dive bezel that's more visible, more legible, to be used as a dive timer. So if you're looking for a true traditional dive watch, this is kind of stepping outside of that a little bit, I feel like. But I really like this design just as far as everyday wearability goes. You do have the timing function. It's just a little bit harder to see because of those numerals. Maybe then it's not going to be visible in all lighting, but still useful for timing things. And I really like the contrast of just that one really brightly loomed Lume pip, because it makes it so easy to find that marker. You're always going to see this. It's not going to get distracted by any other markings on the bezel because it's so much more prominent than the rest of them. This is a ceramic bezel insert. This is a sapphire crystal, so very scratch-proof surface of the top of the watch. And very beautiful brushing and etching on the bezel insert itself. This is Zelos's teal color dial, which is one that they use in a lot of their watches. This is my first time experiencing it. It's just a really beautiful dial color. It's really intriguing, just the different ways that it plays with the light and the different looks that you get off of it. You can see right now in the studio lighting, you're getting this kind of hourglass reflection where you got this hourglass shape that's brighter in the middle and these darker parts on the side. But in a lot of lighting, it kind of just really fades into a pure blue color, covering the entire surface of the watch. And then in different lightings, it might burst into more of like a sunburst look. So I've been really interested in that. And in some lightings, it appears to have sort of like a fume effect, and just a really gorgeous color too. I don't have any dive watches that have this shade of blue, and it's it's not like an odd color. Blue is such a traditional dive color that it doesn't look distracting, and yet it's a very unique shade of blue. It's really draws you in and really fun to have on the wrist. Just a really great color to have in your collection, I think. I love that they color matched the date wheel to the dial. This is a blue date wheel that's in a similar shade of teal that just matches perfectly. And I think that this is just a really great date implementation at the 6 o'clock with the framing. I love that they also included a half marker underneath it so that you still get some after dark performance. You can see the 6 o'clock marker in the dark because of that. And we'll be going over the Lume in just a second here. The build quality and the machining of the watch, very well done. Bezel action is probably my favorite bezel action I've seen from anything from Zelos so far. Just the perfect amount of tension, really satisfying click to the bezel, 120 click unidirectional bezel. And I think they nailed it this time. Likewise, the screw down crown is very easy to operate, very smooth, unscrewing, winding, time setting, everything works great there. There are no sharp edges on the watch or the bracelet. And the clasp is, again, just amazing. This is, probably my favorite clasp of any watch that I've tried so far. And this is they continue to refine it. Like, I thought that the last one was perfect, but it did have some sharp edges here on the top. They've smoothed that out, so they made it even better. I really can't think of anything more that they could do to improve this one. It just fits great on the wrist. And yeah, so it's got this tool-free micro adjust, which is the thing that I really love. So there's that little slide lever right here. You slide that, and that allows you to adjust the size of the watch or size of the band on the fly without needing any tools. The action on the clasp is excellent too. Double push button here, very smooth to operate. Just again, everything feels great here. Finishing on the watch is also excellent. You're getting some nice brushwork across the top and then some nice polishing on the sides here on the bevel. So this is a polished bevel that goes along the entire length of the watch, and actually right on the tips of the lug you've got kind of an interesting thing where the polished section wraps around the edge of the lug, and then you've got this sort of little brushed top area that's very unique. It looks like it's some pretty intricate finishing work there that you don't commonly see. And yet they also included drilled lugs. Again, nice vintage styling cue and helpful for strap changes. And then there's another kind of polished edge going along the bottom edge of this mid case here. So you get brushing along the side and then a little polished bevel across the top and a little polished bevel across the bottom. So really great work. You can see the bezel is a coin edge bezel, very easy to grip with a little bit of a lip there to make it even easier to grab from pretty much any side. You can grab from the top, the side, almost any angle. You're going to be able to get a good grip on that. Back of the case, you have a really nice rounded embossing or pressing of a blacktip shark. Nice sort of blasted background to make the polished sharks pop out from it. No discomfort on the wrist. It's not sharp or anything. Looks great. Really cool case black. And then you can also see that the bracelet also has a quick release system, so you can change the bracelet without tools. You just grab those two posts, squeeze them together, and you can take the bracelet off, put it back on fairly easily, allowing you to change out straps without problems. Talking about strap options, this watch is a strap monster. I believe Zelos on their site, they actually show it on a tropic rubber strap, but they don't include one. So that would have been cool. At this price range, I feel like, you know, maybe they could have with some of the other values that Zelos has done. Looks great on a tropic rubber strap. In a similar vein, I found this also looks really cool on this Artem Sailcloth strap. So this one, you know, the whole watch itself, I think because of that sort of muted bezel, it doesn't really scream dive watch. So when you start getting away from the traditional dive watch straps, put on a sailcloth strap or put it even on a leather strap, it doesn't look that distracting. It's not, you know, you don't get that whole, oh, that's supposed to be on a waterproof strap kind of thing. It doesn't scream that quite as much because of, I think, the design and particularly that bezel. You know, you might look at it more like a daily watch or travel watch or some other kind of watch. So it actually looks really good on a leather strap too. Very comfortable on that. But of course, if you go back to a Nato as well, really cool look on Natos. So a lot of strap options here for this guy. Okay, let's kill the lights and talk about the Lume for a little bit now. And the Lume on this watch is really good. It's not as good as some of Zelos' other watches, but it is on par or better than what you would normally get from Seiko, which is to say then it is excellent Lume. And it looks beautiful after dark. I love that they're using this bicolor Lume thing. Just a great, really cool look. So this is a good, strong, completely usable Lume. You're going to get a lot of great use out of it. It's not going to be like a kind of like boutique sort of Lume. This is really good, solid Lume, but it's not quite going to punch up to the same level of some of the best watches that I've tested. But let's go ahead and test it against some of the other ones and see how it looks. I'm going to be comparing the Blacktip to 4 other watches in my collection, pretty much the 4 best loomed watches that I have. So the Blacktip is on the left, and then right next to it is the Seiko Samurai. Keep close eye on that one because I'm going to be introducing a new lume metric based on the brightness of the Seiko Samurai, because Seiko is kind of the standard by which most other lume, I think, is measured in this, you know, sort of affordable price range. So at the end of this 3-hour test, I'm going to be giving all of them a score. The Samurai will score 100. It's going to be the standard. And the way this works is that if you get a score of less than 100, that's the percentage brightness that it is of the Samurai. So in this case, you can see that the Zelos Blacktip on the markers scored 59% as bright as the Seiko Samurai. However, the handset on it was 117%, so it's about 17% brighter than the Seiko Samurai is. Now, I tend to place more value on the hands when it comes to lume than on the markers, so I would say that this really kind of balances out to the point where the Blacktip is basically on par, in my opinion, with the Seiko Samurai. However, it is still outperformed by the other watches in this lume test. So on par with Seiko, really good lume on this one, but maybe not the top of the line when it comes to Zelos' other offerings. Now, this lume metric is something I'm working on more on, and I'm going to be doing a video dedicated to lume testing, and I'm going to be really kind of trying to get some objective measurements like this and really figure out how lume works on different watches and really which ones are brighter and what that all means. So if you're interested in these kind of objective measurements of lume, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see that video when it comes out, because I've been having a lot of fun kind of crunching the numbers here. Anyways, let's get on with the review. All right, overall, the Zelos Blacktip is one of my favorite watches, if not my favorite watch that I've gotten from Zelos so far. It has such a cool, distinct look to it. It's unlike any other diver in my collection. And again, I don't always even think of it necessarily as a diver. That dark muted bezel with the beautiful dial, yeah, it just doesn't really scream tool watch to me. And yet it is extremely functional, extremely well built. And it just makes, I think, a great everyday wear kind of watch. And if you do happen to need to go diving, if you're gonna, this is kind of a watch that, the skin diving archetype is meant more for like snorkeling and light diving, and this is going to be completely adequate to handle that. So it's not like this is less than a dive watch by any means. This is a dive watch that fulfills exactly the set of parameters that it set out to fulfill, and it does it with a really great style. It's a watch that I found myself really reaching for over and over again because it just is such a fun watch to wear. It's so comfortable. It looks great. Yeah, I really like this watch. Now, it does have a few drawbacks, though. I found 2 quality control issues on the one that I got, which is kind of disappointing, especially at this price range. So the first was on the bezel. It has a lume pip at 12 o'clock, and that is supposed to be the only part of the bezel that is lumed. It glows very brightly. However, if you shine a black light on mine and really charge it up good, you'll notice that some of that lume paint seems to have spread off to the side a little bit and is filling in some of the grooves in the bezel, so you get a little bit of a glow in places where you're not supposed to. You can't see it at all in daylight, and even in the dark, it only lasts for a couple seconds before that light little bit of paint sort of fades away. But it was a misstep there. The lume did go outside of the area it was meant to. And the second issue is a little bit more concerning. The 9 o'clock marker is just slightly skewed. So that means that when the watch reads 9 o'clock, you're supposed to get this really cool effect where you get a straight line where the hour hand matches up completely with that marker and it makes a complete line across the dial. In this case, that line is broken at 9 o'clock. Well, it is fine at 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock you get that effect, but at 9 o'clock, because the marker is skewed a little bit, it doesn't quite complete the line like I think the design language is meant to. And that leads us into the third kind of thing that a lot of people I think are going to hesitate about this watch is the price. People seem to go crazy over Zelos' low-priced watches like the Swordfish, but they are often a little bit more cautious when the price starts to jump up. However, comparing this one to something like the Swordfish, I do feel like there is a definite step up, both in quality and in design and in elegance. Features a higher quality movement, a ceramic bezel, and again, just a really killer design. For me, I think it's definitely worth the price, but at that price, it's something that I think a lot of people do have to consider, and there are a lot of options out there at that price range. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Love to hear from you. Drop me a comment down below. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. I'm going to be releasing, I think, a lot of videos coming up over the next couple weeks. Got a lot of stuff coming in, so should be a lot of fun. But thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.